Hello and welcome back to another episode of MC Airsoft. My name is Mark and today we're going to be talking about maps. Now I got two examples here, one small, one large from different events. So if you get a map issued to you from your event organizer, your platoon company, commander, whatever the case is, then it's going to be pretty easy. You're just going to print it out. Okay, so we'll pick up on what you do after that. But some important information if you're going to be making your own map, right? So the first thing you're going to need is you're going to need satellite or topographical, depending on what you're going for. Generally, satellite is going to be better because if you're dealing with buildings or trees or things like that, you get a bird's eye view. If you want to go with both, you can put topographical on one side and your satellite on the other. So we'll go with this. To start, the smaller one, this is a map from SC Village, okay? And it is a very basic map. You can see up in the corner the little location marker from Google Maps or Google Earth. I'm not really sure, but I think it's Google Maps. Okay, and that shows you how simple a map can be, right? It's got the names of the different fields. It's got a reference point, which is the parking lot in this case. It's got this at the bottom, which isn't really useful, but it is, it's on there. So this is a basic map, nothing special. And this is all you really need if you and your squad, team, whatever, are playing at a local field. For instance, we had a field called NAM back when I used to play in Northern California. That was our normal field. It was a wildlife preserve kind of area. It was public land. You had a reference point, which was the river, and you kind of knew, everyone who had a map kind of knew, okay, that's the trench area, that's the river, over there's the tree house. Okay, you kind of know, and so you can kind of figure it out, and you don't really need grids, you don't need coordinates or anything like that. That was about a mile and a half square. If you were using the whole field, it was significantly smaller generally because we would set boundaries and things like that. But it shows you how basic a map can be, right? So nothing too special. As long as you can tell, like, here's a tree line, here's a river, here's a lake, here's a tower, whatever the case is, it's fairly easy to figure that stuff out. And then, if you're on the radio or if you're just talking to someone, giving them intelligence person to person, then you can say, hey, they're at the tower. If everyone knows what the tower is, then great. Or the bend in the river, or the tree in the middle of the field. If everyone's on the same page already, then you don't need a whole lot of information. So that is from a Lion Claws event, Cartel Wars, happened last year. This is from Lion Claws 21. So it is a map of George Air Force Base, okay, that happened, well, this video should be going up late June, so it would have happened last month for you guys, but We're still like 2 weeks out because I pre-record these videos. So this map is a lot more detailed. It's got, okay, if you can see that, numbers on all the buildings. It's got grid coordinates. It's you got your normal battleship style grid coordinates, which that's the easiest way to think about this is like Battleship, right? The board game, I guess it's on the computer as well, but the board game that a lot of us probably played growing up. If you're too young for that, sorry, but you know, basically it's a alphanumerical grid. You have letters on one side, numbers on the other, and so you pick out like a A19, which tells you where what grid to look at and gives you a general location. In addition to that, there are they have other grid coordinates on here that are just numerical. Alphanumerical works great. So you can take your map, okay, and you can put it into, probably Excel might work. I'm not terribly computer savvy. Something like Photoshop or a photo editor is going to be better. You can see on this one, they circled the outline of the play area. They labeled some other areas and color coordinated them, overlaid it with flags, things like that. This is going to be better for a larger event. Now, why might you need something like this? Well, if you are on comms with headquarters, or you are trying to find your team, maybe you had to walk back to the respawn, so you had to leave your team and they moved on without you, you know, or you're someone found an objective, they're calling for backup, whatever the case is, and they're like, I'm in building, you know, E20, okay, that you find E20, and that's a very specific thing, you can go find that. Or if they're in an area, then you can say over the radio, I'm at, you know, A16, and everyone who's on comms, which there should be at least some people, right? Everyone who's on comms knows, hey, we need to start pushing towards A16 so we can go reinforce these guys who have an objective or are holding an objective. Okay, so you can also say, hey, bad guys, you know, Russia, NATO, whatever, whatever your scenario is based on. Bad guys are, you know, at F9 or whatever. Okay, so you can say like, hey, they're in this area, or high value targets in this area, and that's kind of why you're going to want to set up grid coordinates. Now, how you're going to go about that? Honestly, the easiest way, because I like doing things by hand, the easiest one you can do if it's just for your team is print out a map like this and sit down with a ruler, draw your grid, draw your numbers, letters, whatever other information you need. You should always include some kind of scale. Okay, something like that there, okay, which tells you how far it is. So I can take that, and now ideally I'd have a ruler or something like that. Another thing you can do is the tip of a pen, pencil, marker, whatever. You can use a marker on the end of it. You can say, okay, the tip of my marker is, let's say 100 meters in this case, and I can take it and I can say, hey, they're, you know, 200 meters south of F. Okay, ruler would be better, or some kind of compass that's made for maps. It's probably going to have a ruler or something on it. Okay, you can take your marker and you can measure with the tip of it. You can use a pen, you can use a knife and a marker isn't a terrible option, because you can take a, you know, a knife. This is just my EDC knife. I carry it for airsoft because you might just need a knife. Opening a seal on a bottle of BBs, or prying out thorns because you fell on a cactus. Yeah, a knife just comes in handy. But you can take this knife, you can come down here to the legend. Okay, let me do this on camera. Come down here to the legend, figure out your 100-meter mark. You can make a hash at 100 meters. So now I have a nice black line on it, and then I can sit there with my knife and I can use it as an expedient ruler. And I'll, you know, you can always clean that off later. You can even write on there 100 meters if you really wanted to, or you had different measurements. So I could say, you know, I can measure it off and be like, okay, they're in the, sure, they're in the bottom left-hand corner of H12. But maybe that's H12 and they're 100 meters shy of B10, building B10, okay? So gives you a lot of information to play with. Just having a scale and a grid coordinates there, it's great. If you want to go through a number of buildings, number of houses, that is awesome. You can also say like, hey, the L-shaped building in P23. And if there's only one L-shaped building, great. Or the gray building, or the, you know, whatever the case is. Okay. If there's enough standout markers in that. I would recommend numbering buildings, but that's up to you. And if you have buildings, if you don't have buildings, if the buildings are off limits, or, you know, whatever the case is. And then you'll want to do, as part of your legend, you'll want to put north up, okay? Or, you know, obviously you probably are going to orientate the map so north is up on the page, but having a little thing on there that says north up is great. That way, if you're really confused, and especially on bigger AOs, and more so on AOs that are more rural, not so much buildings and roads, but if it's rural, you're out in the fields, mountains, whatever, having an up, that way you can take out your compass, you hold it away from your gear because it will be affected by metal, but you take out your compass and you hold it out and you orientate the map according to your compass. So that's another great thing you can do as well. So that's going to be one option. You'll also want a legend for if you put any colors or lines or marks or anything else. You'll want a legend for that. You can also put down your team, CO, XO, squad leader, frequency for radio. Now keep in mind that is intel that the opponents can use if, like Milsim West and other Milsim games, you can be searched. Or maybe they're just able to ask if you have intelligence and then you have to hand it over. So you might not want to write that stuff down, at least on your map. So that's the basics of it. Now, what do you do after that? So you've printed it off. I like to have white space either on the front or the back, because I always have a marker on me, and then I can be like, okay, well, you know, as I'm getting intel over the radio, I can turn it over and I can write objective 1 is, you know, at F23, objective 1 F23. That way I can pass that along to anyone who doesn't have comms, or, you know, we get in the area of F23 and it's like, wait, was it F23 or F24? It's right there. Okay. Or, you know, building D17, then I can reference building D17. I can write that on the back, and then I can figure out, okay, D17 is in, you know, J 13, okay? So J13 building D17, and that way when we get around J13, then we can look at the map and say, okay, D17 is the building we're looking for, D17 is here, okay? I can go to that building, or we can go to that building, because the less you have to remember, the better. Now, in addition to that, you could just have a small notebook. One of my favorite notebooks is this, but excuse me. All right, is this one. I don't use it for airsoft, but you could totally use this for airsoft, right? This has a lot of other stuff in it. You know, something that fits in a pocket would be just fine, but you know, whatever works for you is what works for you. I like Write in the Rain. These pens don't work on Write in the Rain, but you know, you get a space pen or something like that, something that works with Write in the Rain, and you know, you can use those. Those are great because you can have it in like back pocket, hip pocket, whatever. And as you're running around, you're getting sweaty. Maybe it's raining. Maybe you know, whatever the case is. Sweat is a big one out here in Arizona, so you're getting sweaty and it's in your pocket, and if you have a normal notebook, that might mess up your writing. So something like that is going to be handy. And then for the map, you notice this is shiny. This is not laminated because Staples told me it was going to take an hour and a half. So what you can do, if you have a lot to laminate and you don't have a laminator or something like that, you can take packing tape, okay? So this one is a brand new map, not folded or anything, but you can see the lines on there if I can catch a reflection. This is packing taped, okay? So you set it on a flat surface, a clean flat surface. You run your packing tape one way, you flip it over, so vertically, let's say, you flip it over, run it horizontally, and fold it over the edges, and you have laminated. You have a laminated piece of paper, and it can be tougher than a lot of other laminated stuff. So this one was laminated and then played with. And if you notice, I have my objectives on one side, map on the other, okay? And it's been folded, so it can be folded. This one, like I said, has been played with, so it's a little less clean, but it is definitely something that can hold up, especially if it's only going to be for the weekend. And it's cheap, so if you already have a printer and a roll of tape, you have a laminator as well. Laminators are nice too, because then you can take, this is a fat example, but you can get the thinner ones. You can take a dry erase marker and you can circle things. You can lay out a plan of attack or whatever you need to do, and you know, and then wipe it off, you know. So if, again, you can have your intelligence captured, you can wipe it off when you're done looking at it, and you can wipe it off, and then you're done. And then on the back, maybe in permanent, where you're writing down objectives and everything, you're just writing down maybe coordinates, and you know that grid coordinates goes first, building number goes second, and that's a little harder to decipher, right? So those are just some ideas for maps. So not everyone has maps, not everyone needs maps, but they can really help when it comes to working as a team on a bigger field. That way you're not just saying the building right in front of us, or the building kinda to the north, or whatever. You're giving them exacting coordinates. So especially when you get to bigger mill sims, things like that, if your team sticks together always and it's a small field and you play there often, you don't really need a map, right? But on bigger fields that maybe you're not used to, maybe your team's not used to, then these things might help out. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and leave those in the comments. Until next time, stay safe and stay hydrated.